Today I want to show you what I take to an interior design consultation. I always have two bags. The first bag is usually like measuring stuff that I'm going to show you now. And then in my other bag, I have more of my samples and things, and I'll go through that. So in the first bag, I always have like really practical stuff. It's not like I'm going to a consultation to measure the property. Obviously, I do that as a service, but for usually a paid consultation, I'll say, well, what we'll do is have about 3 or 4 hours max where we can go through and solve a problem that my client is having. And that usually is something as simple as they just need to help designing their kitchen, or they want to choose all the finishes for a room, or I just want to figure out what kind of furniture to put in the room and whether it's going to fit or not. So they're kind of standard consultation-y, like short bursts that we like, kind of things that we go through on a short consultation. So the first thing that is really important that I always take, and this is like staples in my bag, it's a tape measure. So this one is only 3 meters, but I always have a laser measure as well, just for ceiling heights and longer distances, because if you've ever tried to take a really tall distance on your own, it can be really embarrassing. So I only take really short distances with my tape measure, and then anything longer I'll use like my laser measure. So that's the other thing I always take is my laser measure. And this can actually take angles of ceilings and corners, but actually I also take an angle measure. So that really helps me, usually for things like bay windows and just the angle of the ceiling if it's sloping. So really that really does help, and just to see if something's going to fit in the room. Not every consultation will need a profile measure, but I do take these if for example, my smaller consultation leads to a bigger consultation, or leads to an actual big project. And if I'm there and I can quickly, if I'm not going to be taking a bigger survey or coming back to do a survey, I will take some other dimensions in the space just before I leave. This is really great, the profile. This one is a bit clunkier than I'd like. There are some really fine ones, and I think they're much nicer for like getting a lot finer details. This is a sufficient. Also, I used to have one that was a lot smaller, and when I find a smaller one, I think I'll probably swap this one out for that. This one, like as an example, just to show you, this is what it does, and it just helps you get the profile of it, and then you just draw that on your sheet of paper. So that's what that does. So obviously I always take a good camera. These days I actually try to see a shot that might potentially be a winner shot later on. So I will take a wide angle lens, and then just for me, the photographs that obviously take the room. So because of that, I'll also always take spare batteries, which, I mean, the night before, I have to admit, I always get into a habit of checking my camera, and once I left it on the night before, so it was ready. It's just that it was the battery was flat by the time I went to use it. So I was glad that I actually always had a spare battery. Also, for my laser measure and any other stuff, I always have like just random batteries in my bag, so that really helps. The other thing is I always have I'll always try and research the property before I go. So I do always print off a plan before I go, just so that I can kind of get a general understanding of the spaces that I'm working with. Also, I'm a bit old-fashioned in the sense that I like clipboards. So they help, because I mean, I use like smaller diaries these days. I still have like thicker, bigger diaries that you're probably all used to using, but these are just really great for smaller projects that, like really quick. Sometimes I used to, if the projects aren't that big and it's literally like smaller consultations, I'll take, I'll start at the front and start at the back, and then that book's gone. So, and filed. So, writing on that is a bit flimsy. So I always write on my clipboard. It's just practical. So I always take a scale ruler. I just get into a habit of always having one with me. Scale becomes a language for you when you're a designer, and getting used to those scales and learning that language just helps you be a better designer and understand space better when you're translating it into drawing. So that can help you communicate better once you get an understanding of the importance of scale and how it helps you as a business person. And then the other thing is literally just a cute little pencil case that has everything in it that I need, like my clutchies, so clutch pencils for sketching, felt tip pens, so just other pens for writing with, and different coloured leads. So that's like my staple stuff. I also record all of my meetings, so I can refer back to them. That isn't something I think everyone does. That is just me. I like to kind of listen back to my meetings if it goes into a bigger project. So then hearing how people explain things in their own words is really important for me. Because actually when you're speaking to someone, it doesn't mean that, you can get everything down. Even though I do write a lot down, you can miss little bits and pieces in the intonation of someone's voice, and you can kind of miss little bits. So listening back to things really helped me. So that's not something I would say anyone else really needs in theirs, but it's definitely something that I use, and it's a staple in my bag. So let's have a look at the other bag. So in this other bag, I don't kind of keep these things together because, as you can imagine, samples can get scratched, and you don't want them looking really cruddy by the time you get to a client's house. And already, even samples on their own will kind of scratch themselves. So keeping them neat for as long as you can is really important. So the first thing I always have is a big fan deck. So this one's from Benjamin Moore. I had this one imported from the US. But, the amount of colors that you can see, the spread is really great. And for that reason, sometimes I just use it to talk about, starting with a color with a client, or trying to match the colors in the house, and seeing what colors they appeal to them as well. So also how, just having a good range of colors there, even if they're really small samples, is just, it's enough to have a conversation about. So obviously, you're not going to be getting into depth of too much, but as a professional, at least you've come to the meeting with something that you can relate against, if that makes sense. So because my kind of fan deck is used specifically for, I use it specifically for talking about a big variety of color. When we get down to actual paint colors, I will bring out my my color charts, or my paint charts. And for that reason, I'll always have a spread. Like, for example, I'm not going to use if my client is saying that they want a more high-end finish, or even if they're kind of in the mid-range, I will kind of go, okay, well, these kinds of tone, or this color chart is going to give you a better quality paint, and it's we can look at these colors as opposed to bringing out a lower range paint, which is not going to give them the kind of vibrancy of color, or perhaps the complexity of color that they're looking for. Because when someone's ready to invest in a higher quality paint, their eye can distinguish the reason why they're attracted to that paint. So they will they will see the value in something that has depth of color, rather than just, it's a colored wall paint, So people will see the value in that, and understanding the complexities of what these different colored paints have is why I have more than one paint color chart. And I actually know the paints really well from all of these suppliers. So and to be honest, even for smaller projects and cheaper projects, I will suggest that the client has a look at these better quality paints, and then we can always try to color match and see whether that works, because it doesn't always work. But and then obviously sometimes when the client falls in love with the color, they may say, I'm actually willing to invest in that better paint. So I think having a variety of paint supplies is really important. Again, just because it's a staple in my bag, having a grout sample chart is really important. So I use, I never leave this to chance. If my clients, usually my client would have already they'll have like a couple of samples of the tile that they're planning on using, or the granite worktop that they're going to that they've fallen in love with and they want to use. So this is where these come in handy, because the backsplash, they're like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do for the backsplash. And so more often than not, it's tiled, and the grout color is going to be really important with how the whole effect works. So having a grout color chart, I mean, this one is a bit heavy. I prefer to use the real thing. And obviously this is a Mapei one, but this isn't all of their colors, but they are the most standard colors. So I also have a fan deck from Mapei that I just use. Also, some of them are like glittery, and there's so many options. When it comes to metals, I use this more for when I'm choosing doors, like aluminium doors, window frames, things that are really affecting, even metal beds. So when you're specifying a metal, it's a RAL color. So you need a specific color that is it's a RAL number. So these RAL charts, sometimes they'll color match, but you're paying extra for that. So you might as well just have the RAL chart that's there, and you kind of, okay, well, I know that I'm going to go 7047, and that's the color for the windows that we're going for. Sticking to metals, it's always great having just a couple of samples of different kinds of metals to kind of just have as a comparison. So I don't think this is the best one on the planet. I've had some really nice ones in the past that I always end up leaving with clients, and just having something that you can show, well, you're thinking about having brass and against the bed head, and then it's like all of a sudden, let's just say copper, and then just like, okay, can you see the two differences in those colors? It's like, do you really think that that's going to be a great idea? So you can start to now have a conversation about it, rather than theoretically coming up with a solution going, I don't think that's a good idea, but at least there you can make a reason for it. So the next thing I always have is veneers. These are really important for things like when you're choosing doors. I use them more so for choosing things like paneling for bed heads, cupboard doors, things like that. So having a variety, like some people or clients, don't forget you're the expert. The client will say, I really like black oak. I really want everything to be in black oak. And then you can say, okay, well, do you realize that this is what the black oak looks like? And then they're like, oh no, that's not what I thought it looks like. So sometimes just having, something as simple as an ash veneer, going, oh yeah, I really love ash. I always go for ash, and this is a whiter washed ash, and this is the yellow washed ash. So these are from Graff. And sometimes clients will look at it and go, oh, I didn't realize how yellow it is. And you're like, yeah. So sometimes just having that sample there can bring up a further discussion. Go, I'm glad, and it shows how valuable you are as the designer, being there with them, showing them these things, because then they can say, now that I've seen it here, I don't actually think that's the best option for me. And then you can guide them in the way that serves them the best. This is just an example for mica. And I use One World as well, but as you can see, these are great, even just for discussion in terms of possibility. So these are like laminate surfaces, and I use them also for bed heads. So real options when when your client's trying to describe something. Sometimes whipping these out and just saying, just try and see something, if there's anything here that helps describe what you're looking for. Like when someone's saying, okay, I really, that zebra kind of colored, that zebra kind of print for the as a cupboard door. You're like, oh, okay, do you mean more like that, or do you mean more like that, or more like that? And so they're like, oh, actually no, this is what I kind of had in mind. So it's more about helping your client understand and visualize exactly what something's going to be looking like, because they're the ones paying for it. And ultimately, what you're helping them do is visualize the end result so that they know what they're spending their money on and they're confident about the decisions they're making. So pretty much the last thing I always take is fabric samples, but I'll always bring a spread. So these have, like, as you can see, like there are different types of surfaces and finishes in the fabric, and the experience of each of these, it's not so much about the color, but it's more about the feel of the material. So every material kind of has a bit of a different luminosity, reflection, a feel to it. So just something to get a reaction from your client. Sometimes they're like saying, oh, I really want a leather lounge. And you're like, okay, cool. So here's 2 examples of leather. It's like, do you want the grain to be like really feel like thicker so that you can feel it, or do you want it to feel smooth and really slick? So that just helps your client get an understanding of what it is they want. I wanted to show you 2 other things, and this is, well, firstly, let's go to the timber samples. I will show timber samples if my client is planning on choosing flooring. So I'll bring a couple. These are from a company called Bordeaux. So I'll just bring a really, if my client said I'm looking for a floor, and just to spur discussion, I will bring a bigger, like more samples if that is like my client's sole purpose. But if it's just something like, oh, we're going to look at this room, I don't think I'm really confident about the floor finishes yet. I'll bring some laminate flooring, timber flooring, carpet. So, but as a rule, I won't normally bring a big sample like that. It's only if they're going to go into flooring, because you can have a million flooring samples. And this, I think, it's kind of cute in the sense, when I first started, I wasn't as confident as I'd like to admit with choosing colors. And what really threw me was usually the colors already in somebody's house. So if someone said, oh, I'm going to keep the carpet, and I was like, but it's beige. It's beige carpet. Or it's like, oh, it's a light grey carpet or something. And I was like, I could tell what color it was, but I couldn't explain it to my client. Like, I could see what was right and how it related to everything else around it. I could make the right decision, but I couldn't justify it to my client. So what really helped me at the beginning was literally a simple color chart like this, where I could just go, okay, put it up against whatever surface it was or finish, and then it just helped me go, okay, well, at least I can tell that the undertone of this is yellow. So it was a really simple way for me, but sometimes it was a lot harder, and I couldn't really justify where a color was coming from. And so this color chart really helped me just at the beginning stages of my business. So I hope that helps you kind of figure out what to take to a consultation, and gave you a variety of things that you could consider for yourself. So if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and to visit our website, www.idbs.online.